It's now live, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. Those who are part of the meeting, thank you for being here, and members of the public. And I've got this statement I have to read. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live streaming of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, you're aware by now of the need to keep your video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted except when I invite you to speak. Please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. Once you've spoken, please remember to switch off your raised hand function, etc. And we've got Democratic Services working the technology, so we're in good hands. There's always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If this is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Can I remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded and that these recordings will be published on the Council's website. I need to confirm that you're here, even though I can see many of you. Members, I will begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your attendance. Please unmute your microphone and confirm your presence when I call your name. Mac.
Present.
Thank you. Peter Hudson.
Present.
Councillor Rogers.
Present.
Councillor Sanderson, I beg his pardon. Not present yet. Councillor Wells.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Good morning, present.
And myself as chairman, Councillor Mike Shellens. Do we have, Rob, any apologies for absence?
I've not received any, Chairman.
Thank you. And we need to check whether we have any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest. Does anybody wish to alert me that they're in such a category? I take that as no. So we can move on. Right. Next item, we're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of September. Do I have we're being asked to approve the minutes. Can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to click the raised hand function on the right of your screen now? Terry. Muted.
Whilst reading through it again last night on page 6, the bottom bullet point, it says in the same table, the chairman referenced the figure of £4.59 debt. I think that's, there might be £1 million missing out of there.
Thank you. I hadn't spotted that. Well done. So that's one for Terry. Rob, we can make that minor but significant alteration.
It was when I read on how much of this could realistically be written off, I suddenly realised there was something missing.
Right. On the same page while we're there, a couple of bullet points up where the Councillor Huntston paragraph, we're talking about CCG has a number of financial challenges. They owe us 133 million. Head of Finance was confident that the money would be repaid, but it was right to challenge that it should be pursued to ensure the payments are received. Do we have an update on progress on that? That's probably you, Tom. Mute.
Yeah, there's no real update on progress. As I said at the last meeting, it's a long-term piece of work. The Chief Finance Officer's meeting with his counterpart at the CCG today, and I know it's one of the issues that's being discussed. So we're both continuing to work on it, but the figures are substantially the same as was reported last time.
Right, we will. We've got another meeting coming up fairly soon to sign off the accounts. At that meeting, could you?
Well, I think, Chairman, I think we'd committed to bring an update in January or February, which is the sort of length of time it will take. So I'm reluctant to bring anything more rapidly than that.
Give in. Right. So we're back on the rest of the minutes. Are people happy with them? I see no hands, so I will suggest that we accept these, and I'll sign them when they are, if I am ever back in the office. At some stage, we're going to have to recognize that we're going to have an alternative method for dealing with this, because the number of documents to be signed off is getting substantial. Can I leave that with you, Rob, to think about what plan B is on that, please?
Yes, certainly.
Right. So the next item is the action log, and I'll pass this over to Rob.
Yeah, most of the actions, as you can see, are completed. There are a number that are ongoing. And let me see. I think, just bear with me. I think you will have received most of the updates. What I can't say is on G on, hold on, page 15. Obviously, with Duncan not being here, I don't know if the Chief Internal Auditor did brief you outside of the meeting, but there is to be an update report in November. So.
Yes, I mean, whatever he says to me, the whole committee needs to hear the changes and to give their views on their acceptability. That item still stands. Terry, I think that you had a concern about information reports.
I thought I'd unmuted, sorry. Yes, I did, and I see that question has been addressed in the action log. I'm pleased to note that we can now, at the committee's request, not just the chairman or the vice chairman, but the committee's request, bring in additional items that we think we should be looking at, rather than posting them, so to speak, and hoping for comments. I note also at agenda item 8 that this is going to be put into practice, and we'll be able to see which of those particular agenda items we want to address at the next meeting, and the other one in January, I believe. I think that's right, isn't it, Rob?
Yes, that's correct. I was just going to say that, so you've said it for me. Thank you.
Otherwise, Chair, that's basically it. Thank you very much. I thank the leaders and the other chairs of the various other committees for endorsing our point of view.
Good. And you'll keep an eye on that and make sure that we adhere to your wishes as agreed by JMT. Thank you. So what do we have to do for the action log? Just note it, presumably, Rob, is that right?
That's right, correct.
Good, well, let us note it. So I think that now brings us into the pension fund accounts.
Just to say, item 4, petitions and public questions.
Oh, petitions and public.
There were none.
Good, thank you for that, Rob. Right. Page back to front. So we are asked to look at the pension fund annual report and statement of accounts. Ben Barlow is primed to deal with all the questions we can throw at him. The recommendation is that we approve the final statement of accounts and note the annual report of the pension fund for the 1920 financial year. And the committee views the findings of the external audit documented in the ISA 260. So, Ben, I think you probably start.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we're happy to get to this point. Really, it's been a smooth close down despite. Can
you shout a bit, Ben?
Yeah, let me get a bit close to my camera. Just saying, it's been a very smooth smooth close down despite lockdown measures. We're within all our deadlines. Obviously, there is a reliance on CCC closed down for it to be signed off officially, because we just go at the back of that. The annual report and the statement of account have been in front of the pension committee twice, and the audit committee once already as a draft. So there's no material changes from those. Chairman, we obviously spoke yesterday, and we're more than happy to to make changes to all those sort of commas, full stops, grammatical errors, and thank you for spotting them.
And apostrophes.
And apostrophes and semicolons, maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't do them.
I don't want to steal Mark's thunder from Ernst & Young, but I'm happy to report that it's a clean audit. The annual report and statement of account, or ARSO as we often call it, is clean of material misstatement and gives a true and fair representation of our accounts and is in line with SIP for guidance. So yeah, it's sort of the last hurdle for us now. No major issues to report from our side, apart from COVID, obviously, which has made things slightly difficult with performance in the last quarter and basically how we actually do the close down as a team. But I'm pleased to say it's not held us back. We've still managed to complete what I feel is quite a good and stringent document here. So if I can, I'd like to pass over to Mark from Ernst & Young for his external audit report. Of course, I'm more than happy to take any questions on the annual report and statement of accounts if there is any following that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben. I will refer to the page numbers of our report in your agenda papers as I go through, but I think the context that Ben gave at the beginning of the agenda items key to understand that clearly the finance team prepared the draft financial statements during lockdown, and our whole audit has been done remotely without going to Northampton or indeed into Cambridge offices as a part of that. So if we could take that into the context of the good news messages I'm about to provide, I think that will give you a good overall story. So page 115 of your agenda pack, I don't necessarily need you to go there, I'm just referencing where I'm picking out key information from, is our materiality level for the pension fund, and that is set at £30.15 million. So anything above that would give us an issue in terms of our audit opinion. In terms of the status of the audit on page 116, all our work is complete, all our procedures are complete, and we are ready to sign the pension fund audit. Alas, we can't do it until we sign it alongside the county council audit. So it's going to have to sit in a pending pattern for a month or so until we come back as an audit committee at the end of November and can sign the main county council's accounts. On page 117, we make reference to an emphasis of matter paragraph that we are including in our audit opinion, and that is also set out in section 3. This is in relation to the pooled property fund that forms part of the overall investment strategy of the pension fund, and it is managed by Schroders as the fund manager. It is circa 10% of the overall fund value, and anything up to a 10% movement would have a material impact in terms of property values on our audit opinion. The Schroders Fund Manager report includes the sentence that I've previously talked about a material uncertainty in property valuations coming through from the Risks guidance provided to professional valuers, and as such, that has been highlighted within the statement of accounts. And therefore, given the magnitude of the pooled property fund itself and the potential for a swing, we have referenced it in our audit report through an emphasis of matter paragraph, as I say, the wording of which you can see in section 3. I would note for members that this is not a qualification in any sense of the true and fair view that we would provide on the accounts. We are merely pointing a lay reader to what we consider to be a significant disclosure note in the accounts about those pooled property funds in light of the current circumstances around COVID. Moving on to audit differences on page 117 in summary and section 4 in detail. We have just the one adjusted misstatement which we wish to bring to your attention. As per some of our risks that we have previously talked about through our audit plan, the level 3 investments, or the hard to value ones, if you like, were valued using an estimate for the 31st of March because they take valuation reports from December usually. And given the nature of the market around the end of March vis-a-vis COVID, Clearly, when the updated actual reports came through in June and July, there was a difference between the estimate and the actual. That reduced the carrying value at the 31st of March by 16.99 million, and that has been adjusted for in the revised financial statement before you. That is purely as a result of a timing difference between the information available to Ben and Fiona at the close down period and the actuals that we received during the course of our audit. All the other matters that have had some minor amendment in the accounts are disclosure in nature, the main one being the addition of a going concern note and the narrative around the estimation uncertainty for the pooled property funds. And I'll talk about going concern in a minute. If we then move through to our area of audit focus, which is on page 120 of your pack going forward, these are the audit risks we reported to you earlier in the year, and we set out how we've undertaken our audit procedures and the assurances we've got in relation to them. So I'll whiz through those because they provide you with a significant level of assurance to be able to perform your responsibilities for these accounts. So in terms of fraud, on page 120 and 121, we have not identified any matters in relation to our general fraud procedures, or indeed in relation to our specific fraud procedures around the journaling of investment income and investment values. In terms of the Cambridge and County Bank valuation as an unusual investment, the funds management specialist provided a valuation, and our valuation specialist was able to say that that was in an acceptable range, but we did note there's a significant reduction in the value of the Cambridge and County Bank this year compared to a previous year. So we have all the assurances we require over that bank valuation. On page 123, we have our other level 3 valuations, and I've talked about these. They are hard to value and clearly subject to timing differences when actual reports can come through, and that has given rise to the 16.99 million adjustment that Ben and Fiona have put through. We also reference on that page the detail about the pooled property funds and the estimation uncertainty coming through from Schroders. In terms of pension assumptions and liabilities, on page 124, we have no issues to bring to your attention as a committee. And then on page 125, we set out our response to the going concern risk that has been heightened by COVID. We've considered the overall funding level of the pension fund. We've looked at monthly cash flows and liquidity that the pension fund has vis-a-vis its future benefit payments. And we've checked on the status of admitted bodies and their contribution payments through this year. And overall, taking all of that into account and looking at the cash flow, clearly the management's assumption that going concern is the appropriate basis upon which to prepare the accounts we are comfortable with. But we have added an extra disclosure note taking the readers through that, and Ben and Fiona have added that to the statements. So we've completed all our audit procedures. We have requested a letter of representation, which is the appendix to our report, and that is a standard representation. There's nothing specific or additional we have asked for as a result of our procedures. So again, I think that shows that all the supporting working papers that Ben and Fiona put together have provided the evidence that we need to address our audit risks. And therefore,
that's the one that I'm supposed to sign, is that right?
That will be the one that you will sign at a point in time, yes. There are no other matters that I need to bring to your attention. So if I wrap that up, I think my overall summary would be, given the context we've been operating in since March, this has been a very good, very clean, very smooth audit. And I'd like to therefore thank Ben, Fiona and their team for a good draft set of accounts with very few adjustments that have been put through, as I have said, and clearly really good working papers and responses to our audit questions through the process. So it's really good to be sitting here in October, ready to sign from my point of view. Clearly happy to park it there and take any questions that you have alongside the financial statements that Ben could probably answer as well.
Right, well, thank you very much, Mark, both for the clarity of your presentation here and the way that you've conducted this audit. We are relatively used to pensions doing things well, and it's just comforting to me and I guess other members to see that that trend has continued. but I'm grateful for the attitude with which you've approached some of the issues. I see on page 118 that we request that you review these and other matters as set out to ensure there are no residual further considerations or matters that could impact these issues. You concur with the resolution of the issue. There are no further significant issues you're aware of to be considered before the financial report is finalised, and that's in the context of significant risks as detailed in the document. Does anybody have any comments on that particular point? Just while we start there, please. No? Good. So I'm going to assume that we're happy with those matters. On page 140, there's a reference to the annual transparency report, and it was last updated apparently at the end of June 19, and I wonder when we're going to get the 2020 version.
That page number, is that your report, Mark, or is that?
That's our report, Ben. Yeah.
Oh,
It's all right, Ben, it's all right.
Stand down.
The work for the report has been done. The publication of it on the annual cycle is slightly behind schedule because of COVID-related issues. But that is the last available public report.
At this stage, presumably if one comes out between now and when we sign, that could be updated.
We'd update the one in for the main county audit results report, yes.
Good. COVID, bit of a beast. What impact has it had on the fee, please?
It will have an impact on the fee. It needs to be quantified between now and when we sign, but there's been additional procedures in relation to going concern, in relation to the emphasis of matter paragraph around pool property funds, and generally in relation to a level 3 investment testing and benchmarking around the appropriateness of the valuations for that. It hasn't, at a pension fund level, it's not as significant as the county council because of the nature of the fund, but there have been additional procedures, and we would need to update the committee with the figure at the most opportune time, which will probably be November.
Right. Back to page 123.
Chairman, you've got a couple of speakers. I don't know when you.
Oh, right. I'll deal with this, and then I'll happily subside. The fund's investments include unquoted pooled investment vehicles such as the Cambridgeshire Building Society. Is the Building Society a pooled investment? If so, I don't understand what the pooled investment is.
One moment.
It's the left-hand column, first paragraph. Valuation of complex investments, brackets, unquoted investments.
So it's unquoted pooled investments such as private equity, comma, Cambridge Building Society being separate, not pooled, and property investments, which are pooled. So it probably needs a little bit of reworking.
Yeah,
to make sense,
resequencing.
Or sequencing.
Yes, right. I had my wrist slapped by Democratic Services. Councillor Maguire, you're top of my list.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think the moment's lost, but my hand was up for when actually Ben was presenting the overall report.
I do apologise.
So not to worry, but I think it's still relevant because it's nothing to do with our actual report. But if I can draw you to the paragraph or the section highlights, and specifically paragraph 2.6, which talks about the net market loss, which doesn't come, I'm sure, as a surprise to any of us that the actual loss has been greater than may have been benchmarked. But I just wonder, would it be useful for us as a committee to have a comparison with other pension funds and see typically whether that's a sort of a picture that you'd see right across the country, right across all local authorities or whatever. As I say, it doesn't come any surprise that due to COVID-19 that it's larger, but I think you get the gist. I just don't get a feel for that in comparison with national investment funds.
Right, well, we're certainly happy to ask for that, Mac. What I would say is that somewhere or other, and I've read so much in the last 36 hours that I can't remember precisely where, there is a reference to say that our performance was worse than benchmark. And if benchmark is the other authorities, then that would be a global figure, but I'd be very happy to have a detailed comment. Thank you.
If I can just come back there, Chairman, that this is against our own weighted benchmark, which was minus 3.3, and we've actually come out at 5.7. It's what is, but if there is a national benchmark, it's it for whoever does that. Useful to know.
Ben,
if I may, yeah, such benchmarking and reporting of investment performance will be brought before Pension Committee and the Investment Subcommittee. I think that's already been done actually with first quarter. So it's something that may not be brought to Audit Committee, but is something that does exist.
Terry?
If I may come in on that particular subject, we're at the moment, for the benefit of all committee members, within the pension fund, we're looking at benchmarking. It's very difficult to compare one fund with another fund because obviously what you have in investments, what you hold with regards to equities, what you hold with regards to property, what you hold with regards to infrastructure and the like. But what we have discovered is that we're in equity side, we're not looking at the right benchmarks.
So you're comparing apples and pears.
Basically, that's the problem. So we've asked the officers to, and that's what they have been doing, and will hopefully bring to us in the committee in the next 3 weeks, that looking at benchmarking. I have a paper which was produced by the officers, if the members are interested, about benchmarking in total, and it makes an interesting read. If you'd like, I'll ask my officers to circulate it to all of you, and then you can understand the difficulty that we are facing when it comes to benchmarking.
First of all, well, thank you for that. Secondly, certainly I would like to see the paper. As you know, I've had a long running war at our apparent underperformance against quotes benchmark. Thirdly, there is some confusion in my mind, and I've had it explained to me and forgotten the answer, as to whether the non-market-based Cambridge Building Society and so on are included in the valuations when used to identify the performance against which benchmark is compared. But basically, I mean, if the mandates are broadly similar, then the mandates are broadly similar, and we ought to be able to perform against them. You and I can have an arcane discussion later about that off base. But yes, circulate the paper, please. I've got Terry Rogers and David Wells.
If David would like to go first, and I'll follow if that's all right with you, Chair.
Certainly. Councillor Wells.
Thank you. I had two questions. One regarding the audit. I understand the good reasons why there have been no physical activity at Northampton or Cambridge. But my question is, does that have a material impact on the audit? You know, are there important activities that couldn't be done and might therefore increase the risk of something being missed?
I think that's a perfectly valid question. I mean, my suspicion is that the audit is based on what's on a bit of paper or in a computer file, but I'll let Ben or Mark respond formally.
Yeah, shall I start, Mark?
Sure.
I mean, the way we do close down, basically we're giving a list of tasks, which are points that the auditor would like to look at. And we produce working papers to back up figures we have within the accounts. So that element of it, we can do in the office, we can do in children's playroom where I am now. You know, we can pull those documents together easily, and with the IT we've got, we can speak to auditors and we can supply those working papers to the auditors. So from a point of view of the officer point of view, we can do the same work, we can produce the same working papers and make them available. Mark, I don't know if you want to come in on that.
Indeed. So just to go over the top of that, I wouldn't be saying that I am comfortable to sign an unqualified audit opinion if we hadn't done the full suite of audit procedures required, and that has not been any different from any previous year. But the way we have got some of that evidence, as Ben has set out, we've had to change our procedures. So as an example, if Ben ran a report from a computer system that told me that the asset value was X, we would usually go back to the computer system and make Ben rerun that in front of us in the office to show that the right parameters had been used and the right dates, etc. So we've done that over Teams this year, just physically watching Ben or Fiona run or provide a report for us. So we've done it live via IT rather than live in physical presence. So we've had to change some of our approach to take into account that, but there's nothing we have not done as a result of COVID and not being able to visit people on site. And I think we've had more regular liaison meetings over Teams during the audit to keep up to date, rather than one of my team being on site in Northampton to brief Ben and Fiona appropriately. So we've probably done more of the dialogue in formal meetings rather than kind of general chit chat as part of the audit process.
Also, I will add, the office is still open. So if there's, I don't know, a document in a cupboard that we need to get to check, I can still go and get it. It's just that we're not based there full time. We're mainly at home.
I'm looking forward to the indication from Mark of the reduction in fee to be charged, because there's no longer all the travelling necessary and so on. So, David, do you feel you've been answered?
I think that's a good answer. Thank you. My second question, maybe more one for the pension committee, but on page 35, where we talk about, or the accounts talk about admin expenses and investment management expenses, I noticed particularly the investment management expenses have gone up significantly compared with forecast. Has someone looked at that and understood why?
Yes, yeah. There's two issues really. It's mainly a timing issue of how we've recorded some costs over the year and changed the way that we measure those costs. We have done a working paper that basically breaks it down and shows that actually we've just got costs in that merge the end of year, and when they're broken down, it does look as we'd expect. That has been taken to pension committee. Fiona, I don't know if you want to come in on that.
Yep, absolutely. So for the investment management expenses, the number that is forecasted is everything that's invoiced. So we physically pay cash over to the investment manager, whereas in the actual, that includes all the investment manager fees that are directly deducted from the net asset value for the investment manager.
Such as?
So for private equity, that will be deducted from the net asset value. A lot of our pooled funds, they do not invoice us, they deduct from the net asset value. What I can do is I can get you a split of what was actually invoiced for the year and what was not invoiced for the year, and they'd be more in line with what the actual forecast is on that.
And that's a piece of work we've done to show it's largely as we'd expect for those invoiced amounts.
So what I'm hearing is that they take their fees out of the figures that they provide to us directly, and therefore they don't invoice us.
Yes.
Yeah. Some fund managers do, some don't. And obviously, if you change fund manager within the year, you might change from one that does to one that doesn't, which will shift that number.
Right, David, is that clear?
Yeah, but particularly if that breakdown has been given to pension committee to review, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Councillor Rogers, thank you for your patience. You're still muted. That's better.
I've just had a visitation by a visiting dog. Do apologise. Mark, you mentioned 10% in Schroders. In fact, it was slightly less than that. I know we were talking in small percentages, but at the end of March, it was around about 8.2%, and the other 1.8% was property in a separate investment. Now that's dropped down to 7.3 or 7.6% in Schroders, basically because at the end of March, we had a big dip in equity holding as a result of COVID, and obviously proportionally, Schroders came up in the value of the fund. So it's disproportionate to look at percentages sometimes, and I'd like obviously to congratulate the officers for all the hard work they've done, but we were really hit in that last 2 weeks of March by COVID, which absolutely meant the hard work the officers had to put in as subsequent to that. I just have to congratulate them. They've been phenomenal as far as I've been concerned. And I know the pension fund members already said that they're so pleased with what's been achieved. That's really all I want to say, Chair. I've got nothing to criticise. I'm just very pleased that we've brought a very, what I think, a good audit before the audit committee. And I hope you'll give us a big tick in the box. And I'm speaking now as chairman of the pension fund, of course.
Hands up for tick in the box. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark and Ben. Ben, I'm going to come back to the main report that we haven't just gone through yet. Mark, thank you for what you've done. And as I say, the style in which you've done it has been non-confrontational, but we still got the answer that you needed out of our system. So I'm pleased about that. So are we happy to accept that element of the report? Okay, so in that case, can we go back, please, to page 18? I'm sorry to drag you all the way back, but Rob, I've only got a single screen here, so I'm going to turn my, I'm going to look at the document. So if you see hands, can you, as you did before, nudge me? Thank you. Right, I just need to do that. I need to go back to page 18.
Oh, Councillor Maguire has got a point.
Councillor Maguire.
Chairman, a request. This is back to the old problem of some people having paper copies of the reports and some of us looking at electronic. So when you refer to page 18, can you help us out, or can somebody, one of the officers, help us out and tell us which page you're actually looking at? Is it the covering report, or are we going back into the full EY report?
This is my covering report, I believe.
So page 18, I don't think I've got as many as 18 pages.
Page 18 of my covering
It starts
report.
Background. The pension fund statement of accounts form part of the council's, etc.
Thank you, Chairman. On the electronic copy of the agenda, that's page 2 of 3. Okay, thank you.
Right, well, and I'm looking at, oh yes, well, I don't think you need to worry about this. This is simply just to bring to your attention that we had receipts of 126.5 million, which was 2 million up, and the benefit payments also increased, but by less. So there was a marginal cash flow advantage there, but it's not significant in the great scheme of things. My next is now into the main report, where we say that 94% of the employers are now providing monthly data. And I just wondered what the prognosis was on that figure getting higher.
Yeah, so in the business plan, we're targeted for the end of this year for 100%.
Jolly good luck for that.
Yeah.
100% is always a very challenging target when you're dealing with disparate employers. Again, this is simply for noting on page 27, which is scheme administration. I haven't even got a paragraph number here. One employee on average deals with 2,258 pension accounts. And I just think that's a phenomenal number. And I am very grateful for people who cause all this to happen so efficiently. Mac, I'm finding it very difficult to comply with your perfectly reasonable request. Page 35. That was the investment management has gone up twice, over twice. So management and financial performance continued. Management expenses, investment management expenses have gone up from 6.5 to 14.6. Now you've got some notes on the side there, variance analysis, but you don't actually explain, as I see it, why we've more than doubled. Ben, Fiona?
So, go on, Fiona.
So there's a comment that says investment management expenses forecast is understated as this does not include pooled fees deducted from market value. We can expand that to what we've discussed earlier to make it more clear to the reader.
Yes, I mean, we just need to give them the information to close the gap, don't we, in their minds. On the next page. Yes, we've got, gosh, this is hard to read. Yes, we've got the achievement of various tasks, and we're getting 94s and 92s, and then there's a dip to 84, I think, for one of the KPIs. Has there been any failure to meet a KPI where we've not met the KPI, where we've not met the legal target on this massive activity that you do?
No, there hasn't. These are reported to pension committee, each pension committee.
Right. We then come to a massive table showing one line for each contributing employer. And I picked up 3, and no doubt all of you will have read these in detail, but Action for Children, Abbots Mead and Elon UK seem to have no employer contributions, but they have had employee contributions, and I just don't understand how that can happen.
Yeah, every single employer at the time of valuation, so valuation is every 3 years, the rate is calculated for them by the actuary. Now, in some cases, usually when it's a very small employer, they have massively overpaid employer contributions in previous years. So there's no longer.
Why?
If it's a very large, it might be a very large organisation that shrunk during the year and they kept having to pay a increased amount when actually there was very minimal employees. So if you've got an organisation that has shrunk quite a lot during that 3-year valuation cycle, they may have overpaid their contributions quite a bit. When they get valued at the end of that cycle, they're suddenly a small organisation. So you'll have some organisations that the actuary has agreed they don't need to pay employer contributions, and those are what you're seeing.
Okay. There's a reference to our management companies investing according to the mandate with which they're issued, and that's their legal basis for proceeding. What I thought was an interesting theoretical question is, if there was a change in circumstance suddenly, how would we deal with that? Any actions that were then necessary pending the meeting with the investment manager in order to modify the mandate?
So we can definitely have separate conversations with some investment managers to see how they would deal with sudden changes in regulation. But I would imagine that investment managers do have protocols and contingencies in place for if there was a sudden regulation and they weren't allowed to invest in a certain country or a certain asset.
One of my troubles is I listen to what people say, and you said, I should imagine. Can we actually have that nailed down?
Yeah, I think the clear answer would be is that any regulation changes would need to, committee would bring forward, or would be presented to pension committee, and then we would request that fund managers prove that they are meeting updated regulation.
Right, but all that takes time. What happens tomorrow?
I can take it away. It's probably a question for our investments team.
Could I come in there, Chair? I mean, most regulations with regards to changes within the United Kingdom, for example, go through a very staged process in Parliament. And so we're well aware.
Stayed, Terry,
Well,
stayed.
I was kind of referring to the white paper, green paper.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So we're well aware of any likely proposal. I mean, McLeod and Sargent and other cases recently being resolved or not resolved in some cases. We're well aware of the changes that are likely to come, and we obviously can look at the cost or benefits to the fund in that particular instance. The only thing I can think you might be referring to is something external, like not being able to invest in China or Russia tomorrow for some particular reason.
Yes.
Well, the whole, not just ourselves, but the whole of, let's say, the investment management system would have to address that accordingly, and we would get diktats from whoever it would be responsible to provide those diktats. But I can't see that happening. Otherwise, internal ones, we're well aware of what.
Yes, I take that point. But I mean, happily, we're this side of the pond, but one could well imagine that if when we're the other side of the pond, there could be very sudden lurches.
Well, yeah, but that would affect the markets, and that's the global markets. And obviously, everybody follows the global markets. What's go down comes back up again. I mean, we're looking at over a 40-year period. I know that our external auditor commented on particulars about Schroder. Yes, we have property investments. We know property has gone down over the last 6 months. Who's to say what's going to happen in the next 40 years? Property might be, increased by 500% over the next 10 years, but it's things that we do look at and then judge accordingly.
Can I suggest you don't bet your house on that?
Well.
Page 52. This is now talking about the pool. The costs of the pool are collected by a nominated access authority and recharged in equal shares to the 11 access funds. Could somebody tell me what proportion of the access fund, total access fund, is down to Cambridge? Are we paying a bigger percentage or a smaller percentage of the investments?
So I can not tell you that off the top of my head, but I can definitely find that information out for you.
That would be lovely.
It's worth noting that these are the administration costs and the governance cost of running the access pool, so not the investment fee or the operator fee, which we would pay a fair share to the investment manager.
The running costs are basically divided between the 11 authorities equally.
Yeah.
And any profits made are made dependent upon the investments that you put into the various pooled equity or other things, property, for example.
Right. Okay. On the same page, which is page 52, talking about investment policy and performance, I've got a reference to indirect costs include, quotes, implicit costs. And I just wondered what an implicit cost was.
I think this is one of those issues where we have to follow wording from SIPFA in a lot of cases. Diane, is this the section that is provided to us by Mercer's as well?
No, we receive all this information from our investment managers. So implicit costs are costs that we don't directly pay for. So I think the best way to describe some implicit cost is an opportunity cost when buying in the market at a different time, and it could be the loss on income that you haven't received. Another example could be depreciation. So they're not direct costs that we have in our accounts, and they're very difficult to determine what they are.
Splendid. I hope everybody understands that. Page 53. Oh, sorry. Going the wrong way there. There's a reference to, on page 53, equities are 58 sorry, equities were 58%, but we then reduced them down to 61%. So we had a target to reduce our equity exposure and ended up increasing the percentage of the fund in equities. Right, I found myself. It's investment allocation and performance, page 53. Strategic allocation from 1st of April 19, equity 58%, actual allocation 31st of March 20, 61.2. And this is after the bashing in the market.
I think this is
Yes.
indicative of just a point in time as at the 31st of March. So I think the process was that we were moving equities around. We haven't finished moving it around by the 31st of March. Is that right, Fiona?
Yeah, so it is worth noting that the strategic allocation at the 31st of March 2019 for equities was 65%. So on the 1st of April, it was changed, agreed by pension committee to 58%. So over the year, we have reduced equities by 4.8% into the alternative space, but it takes a long time to build up our alternatives. But since March, we have
No, I'm not talking about since March. What I'm saying is we said we were going to reduce a percentage and we've increased it.
At
So
this
we
point in time.
Can I come in again?
Certainly,
please.
Terry.
If I'm looking
It
at
is dangerous having somebody who knows what he's doing sat in this meeting, yes.
I've got our March report here. I thought we might need it. So if I remember correctly, in fact, we sold off an alternative asset at the end of March, and we put it into our equity holding as a passive holding, if I remember, Ben, just to earn interest on it, basically, albeit lower than intended, whilst we sought to put it elsewhere. So the reasons why our equity jumped from 58 to 61 is we sold off one particular asset, put it into equities as a holding venture, and I'm trying to find out what that particular asset was, but it would take me a few minutes.
I think it would be helpful if we could have a one line which says the 61% includes a temporary holding while assets were reallocated or something, because it does look odd.
Yeah, and I mean, as you know,
we're happy to do that.
Yeah, as you know, we're currently aiming for 58% equity, and we now just dropped it to 55% with our new venture, so to speak.
Yes, right. Leaping forward to total fund performance, just 3 to flag up. Dodge and Cox, the return was minus 18.6. The benchmark was minus 5.8. Alternatively, Adams Street, the achievement was 16.7 positive, and the benchmark was minus 5.3. And Harbourvest, similarly, the return was 12.5, and again, the benchmark was minus 5.3. So two did extraordinarily well in very odd circumstances, and one did less well. I'll just flag that up.
If I can come back to you, not as a challenge, Chair, but yes, in fact, as you know, Dodge and Cox, we weren't very happy with their performance. We had a review, but believe it or not, Dodge and Cox have performed very well over the past 5 months, whereas J.O. Hambro, which was performing well, has dropped slightly. It's a question of value against growth,
yes,
whichever you're holding in. So it's the ups and downs again of investments.
Yep.
Dodge and Cox had some investments in Zoom as well, which was a good time to do that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Page 59. I think this is just where we pick up that the fund achieved a negative return of minus 5.7 net of fees versus a strategic benchmark of minus 3.3. Page 50, page 60. The fund holds a material part of assets, circa 58% in the equity portfolio. Now, I mean, this is Mercer, but we didn't at the end of March.
Yes,
and I wonder whether that needs to be corrected.
Yes, I have updated that figure following our conversation yesterday.
Oh, well done. Right. Page 64, we have some blank pages. I'm assuming that we will just pick up Mark's dulcet words and slot that into this space. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct, yeah.
Right. Page 71. The pension fund, it's the same issue all over again. The pension fund has an allocation of 64.7% to equities. I mean, we just need to have consistent figures across this equities or explain why it's different.
Yeah, I've also updated that figure following our conversation yesterday.
Oh, that's boring. Right. I leaped to page 76. Yes, on page 76, which is notes to the pension fund accounts continued, on the right-hand side, this is note 5. Pool property valuations have been based on information prior to the outbreak, on the assumption that values will be restored once property markets resume. I notice they don't give any time span for when they think values might equal February 2020. I think that's a very optimistic, I think it gives the wrong sense, frankly. I think that's misleading.
We're happy to look at it if you've got some wording you would like to recommend.
Now, don't put it back on me. That's unfair. I asked the questions.
These sorts of things really are questions for our investment team. So if you would like us to raise that with them, these are words that we either get from the investment team or have to follow the SIP guidance course.
Okay.
So we're happy to take any wording.
Yeah, just go in and expostulate and get them to ring me, and then we'll have handbags for two and meeting for two and handbags for one. Page 78, which is a list of investments, it's note 14 for the 31st of March 2020 for 19 was 377,000 million, and on 31st of March 20 was a solitary one, which is all alone and beginning to cry. What happened?
Yeah, so we sold out of Schroders UK equity, so it's transitioned during the year, and that one was just some residual equities that was left on the account, which we have since sold the remaining. So on that equities line, it will be zero now. Yeah.
Right, I leap to page 90, where the note says, the potential price changes disclosed above are broadly consistent with one standard deviation movement in the value of assets. Now, I think that's slightly difficult for the man on the Clapham omnibus or the guided bus, but I'd always understood that standard deviation was a measure of spread of values. And we've only got a single value here, so I'm not sure that that's a genuine use of the correct statistical term.
Is this SIPFA guidance wording again, Fiona?
I think it is, but we can definitely
Happy to have a row with SIPFA.
We can definitely review that and get back to you.
That would be nice. Thank you. Page 93, during the year, page 93, so this is currency risk. During the year, the fund partially hedged the currency exposures on its equity investments by transferring into currency hedge share classes of its passive equity funds. Could somebody put that into English for me, please?
Fiona, do you want to get that one?
Rotter.
Yes, so we had holdings in UBS equities pooled funds, and to protect the values fluctuating so much due to currency rates, we then hedged those holdings so we wouldn't feel the full impacts from those fluctuations.
Right, because I'd seen elsewhere that we don't hedge for investment reasons. I don't mean investments, speculative reasons.
Yeah, we had altered the wording slightly following a comment that it sounded almost like a bit of a gamble. So hopefully the wording now it's been updated a couple of times to reach your approval, shall we say?
Right.
Again, happy to look at it again though if
Yeah.
you feel it doesn't read right.
Right, I'm leafing through. That's all right. Right. We've basically gone through most of the report now. What we haven't got is a final report because this meeting was created to sign off the accounts. This meeting will not sign off the accounts. We've got another meeting fixed for whenever it is in November. So are we going to make that date?
There'll be no changes to this, no sort of major changes to what we've brought for you today.
And I think from the county council side, we're fairly confident at this stage we will make that date. I think we're very close to finishing all of the audit queries, and then there's time built in for review. So certainly I'd expect that we can come to the November committee with both the county council accounts and an ISA report, and be in a very good position for the end of November.
Good. Rob, as we've got a recording of this, I don't need to ask you to minute that Tom said that, but we hope that he manages to deliver on that, because it would be embarrassing if we had to delay yet again.
So just to add, Chairman, this year the statutory deadline is the end of November, kind of reflecting some of the pandemic consequences. So
yes.
It will, if we can get done by the end of November, it will be good, because we'll have signed in line with the national deadlines for the first time in a number of years. So
ever since I took over this job, yes. Right, I then got some mystifying pages which seem to refer to objections by ex-councillor Mason and so on. And I don't propose to go through those because they wrote what they wrote. But what I can tell the committee is that BDO have now agreed or have diaried a meeting with the chief executive to go through their review of the outstanding questions that have been perfectly reasonably asked by members of the public, and we have not responded to them formally yet because they were handed to BDO. So I'm grateful for that. I leap to page 118 if I can find it. Sorry, moving between things is time consuming. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I'm closing in on page 118. Right. Nope, sorry, we've dealt with that. Okay, I've run out of questions, you'll be all pleased to know, on the pension report as presented to us by Ben and Fiona. Does anybody have any further question they would like to raise on that before we take a view on it? No? Okay, Rob, what is it we're supposed to do for this?
You're asked to approve the final statement and note the annual report of the pension fund accounts for the 2019-20 financial year, And you've already done the second one, review the findings of external audit document in the ISA 260 set out as Appendix 2 to the report. So if you would approve that.
Anybody got any further questions as to why we should? Mark?
You need to slightly amend the wording because they need to be formally approved alongside the main county council ones before sign off. So I think you can improve it in principle, subject to the next formal meeting where they'll be approved alongside the main county council accounts. So I wouldn't expect you to do anything at the next meeting in relation to the pension fund accounts we've just discussed. Just update your approval for that date, because that's the date you will all sign it.
Rob, are you clear?
Yes, I am.
Good. Right. So just to go back, subject to that, are we happy to accept these reports? I get a thumb up from Terry and John and David and Councillor Maguire. Good. So that now brings us, I think, to the next item, which is the whistleblowing annual report. Mark, I don't know if you wish to leave us at this stage. You're perfect. It's a public meeting. We're delighted to see you here. But if you were to go and do something useful somewhere else, I wouldn't want to stand in your way.
That's very kind. I will stay for this item because it is of interest.
Right. Okay. Who is introducing the whistleblowing report? Neil.
I believe it's Neil Hunter.
Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. This is a report that you have already had circulated. I think Councillor Rogers raised at the last meeting that he would like this report to be formally on the agenda, and I think that was supported by committee, and that is why it's here today. So you probably have already read it. The important thing is that we're asking you to approve the report and de facto approve the very slight revisions to the whistleblowing policy of that we updated in January 2020. The report gives you a flavour of the type of work that we have done. I say it's done by colleagues across the LGSS team, and our fraud team have. It's a great title, isn't it? Our team that look after fraud.
Thank you.
Prepared this report, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you have on it, or obviously take questions away for a sort of a more detailed response if I am unable. The report itself, the whistleblowing policy, the sort of main changes, to be honest, it's a tried and tested policy. The main change is to update the key officer contact information. That's a regular update. If you are minded to approve that, I understand that the colleagues who work in the fraud area will re-communicate this through the council's intranet site, just to make sure that we are always communicating and championing the necessity for good cultural values in these areas. We have undertaken a publicity campaign, again, to sort of try and ensure that people are aware of the policy and the results are here for you, and actually also included in the next item on the agenda. I think that's probably all I need to do in terms of introduction, Chair.
Right. Could you give us a for instance of a change from X to Y? Do you have that big pieces of paper necessary to do that, or can you remember one? Just so we get a flavour of these minor changes.
The minor changes. I mean, I will admit that I had a look at it this morning to answer that question. The key officer contact information has obviously just changed.
Yeah, that's fact. Yes.
The key officer. The other one that we noticed is an updated public concern at work to protect, and I can't find that referenced. So I will commit to go away and then email the committee after this to explain exactly what those changes are.
Right. Okay. Because I have to confess, I mean, I've seen this over the years, and I could, I think, if pushed, quote some bits verbatim, but don't test me on that. So my eyes were not necessarily very peeled looking at this, but I would, if necessary, when on the basis of your information, one might then reread certain sections more clearly. The thing that I picked up was that
Councillor Rogers, I think, has got his hand up. I don't know if you.
Well, I'll come in first.
Yeah.
The thing that I picked up was that we had a sample of 100, which is, you know, a reasonable size, and we only had 42% response. Are you comfortable that that is sufficiently robust?
It's a really good question, obviously. You know, we wouldn't expect 100%, we wouldn't expect 10%. Is 42% reasonable? I would always want to get a higher response rate, but there's a degree to which you have to be realistic as auditors, and after a number of reminders, unless it's mandatory or compulsory for people to fill in the...
How many reminders were there?
I don't know, but I can again come back, but I would expect probably just one. I think that will be seen as our noble standard for this type of work. I think it's no lower really than previous types of surveys. I think, you know, I could feed back to the team to say, you know, that members of this committee felt that percentage maybe improve next year, and to maybe reassess how assertively we follow up with colleagues across the organisation to fill in those particular questionnaires.
Members, what do you think about that? Is anybody bothered?
Yes, Chairman. Not so much bothered. If I can come in, I have got my hand up, but I've been...
Yes, you have, yes.
Had his hand up before me. The only comment I'd make, and as Neil says, it's very difficult, but what I think in paragraph 4, the staff survey bit, in terms of and you're quoting the 42%, I think it would have been useful under the results things to actually make it obvious that, you know, in terms of the results of those surveyed, you know, you talk about 95% of staff were aware. That's only 42 responses. So 95 of those. 95% of those 42 presumably were the ones who were aware, and I think that just would, from a public perception, that would, I think that needs clarity. And what would be useful is knowing we've randomly selected 100 employees, members of staff, what percentage that is of our total number of staff. In other words, how big a random sample is it? Yeah. That sort of thing is statistically, I would have expected that results thing to be a bit more broader, better explanation for public consumption. Otherwise, you don't know whether you're talking about 100 out of 10,000 or 600. Follow what I'm getting at?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, Neil.
Percentages, but I will sort that out for the next report that you receive on this.
Good, thank you. Mac, is that your hand? You're muted.
Sorry, I'll take it down now.
Right, okay. Terry.
Mac has just covered one of my comments, was the actual figures and statistics, and I think that's been clarified. You covered my other comment, Chair, if I may, with regards to, it would have been nice if the actual reports been sidelined where changes have been made. I know it eventually goes out, but presentation to committees, it's nice for us to look at that. And my final comment was, if I remember correctly...
Sorry, Terry, can I just pause you there? This is something that we have said several times in this committee, and I can't recall it happening. So I think can you, internal audit and others, if necessary, take on a minor temper tantrum here. We want sidebars, because if you're reading 200 to 300 pages a week, you don't want to read stuff that you don't need to read. Sorry, Terry.
Yeah, and the other, if my memory serves me correctly, Neil, the last reports we had were ranging around about 12 to 14 cases. And my question, I don't really want to know the details, but I thought up to 21 cases was a significant jump, and there was no real explanation as to why there had been a third jump as far as I remember. But those were my three comments, and one of the reasons why I wanted it brought before committee.
Just to take the final point, Councillor Rogers, I think it's difficult to know why there's been an increase. However, yes, there is an increase, and we are seeing, you know, within the organisation, it could be a better awareness of the policy. It could be culturally acceptable, more acceptable to raise a whistleblowing. But all we see, I guess, from audit is that as being a positive, that people are empowered and do feel empowered to raise any concerns that they may have, be they major or minor. You know, I usually get asked by the chair, you know, questions like how many do you think we should have, and nearly impossible question to answer. All I can ever respond and say it is positive to see an increase in the number of referrals. I would be more concerned if that went down to zero, because then I think
2 years ago it was 8.
Yeah, it's on an upward trajectory. All we can do as a team is to keep reminding colleagues that this policy is there, and to encourage people.
It's there for their protection.
Absolutely, 100% Chair, yes.
Yeah. Can I just go back briefly to the sidebar issue? Rob, can you take this up in the office? That we really do want, and other committees may be the same. I mean, I don't know what other members feel like if you get repeated reports.
Sorry, can you just clarify what you mean by the sidebar issue? Sorry.
Terry?
In my previous life, if I got a report or I got a memorandum or something from another officer, any changes made to what is currently in being is the little sidebar against it on one side. So your eyes immediately drawn to that particular sentence or paragraph, and you know the rest is regurgitation, but there has been a change.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're trying to compare something that's old and new and trying to find out unless it's actually clearly identified in the covering report. But most times it just says we've made changes and you don't know what changes have been made. That right. Just draws your eyes straight to it, Rob.
Yes, you'd have to take a view as to whether it should still be there in a final document going out for public consumption. But certainly for internal consumption, I think that would be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, the only way I can't say at the moment is, because I'd have to take it away, is how it would look. But certainly something has to be said on, you know, what the changes are, because obviously we've got the accessibility regs. So, you know, we'll just.
But if it's an internal document.
Internal document, yes, no problem.
Yes, yes. I'm not talking about final committee reports necessarily, unless somebody takes a view that it wouldn't be a bad idea anyway. Right, okay. Are we happy? I've got Councillor Maguire waving energetically. You better go and have a lie down after this, Mac.
No, it's because, Chairman, my hand was up and you seemed to be, my blue hand was up and you seemed as if you were going to move on.
Quite right.
That's why I waved. I just have to say, I have great sympathy with the point that Councillor Rogers was making, because he comes obviously from a similar background to myself. And it's probably an MOD type approach to alterations, and any changes made to documents is to have that sidebar. Where I would disagree with the follow-up is that whether it be a public document or an internal document, it shouldn't make any difference, because if there's a document that's already out in the public arena and it is then amended, then to have a sidebar to show even a member of the public that there has been a change is perfectly valid. So I wouldn't restrict it just to internal documents, but it's something I've been harping on for years. I mean, you know, we used to have in a particular area of the military that I worked with, we had what we call special alteration notices, acronym SPALT. And it was you were quite aware that there had been changes drawing your attention to a particular paragraph. And I think it's perfectly valid, but I've been harping on about that for How long have I been a councillor? 35 years, and I haven't brought about that change in local government. But I would welcome it, but I tell you, it's going to be a monumental task because it would have to be right across the board, and it'd be very, very difficult to introduce that unless there was a sea change to the way local government produces documents. That's my opinion, Chairman.
Right. Are we up for a challenge? I am. Councillor Hudson, you have been unusually quiet. Can I draw you into this? Would you welcome this? You are on.
I personally don't need it, but if people find it easier, then that's fine. But I'm an ex-military man as well, so I'm used to standing operating procedures, but these are just documents you read and make notes on. I don't personally need it, and we spent half hour talking about something we could talk about outside of a public meeting.
Okay.
Just saying.
That's fine. I did ask. Anybody else want to comment? Comments from non-military people are acceptable. No. Okay, fine. Are we happy to conclude the discussion of the whistleblowing policy? Yes. Sorry, Terry, you were giving a thumbs up. Yes. Okay, right. So what are we required to do on this, Rob?
You're required to Audit and Accounts Committee to approve the report. So it's the whistleblowing annual report.
Anybody not wishing to approve it, please signify with the raised hand function. Fine. Okay, we approve it. Which brings us to the next item, which is, Rob?
It's the Internal Audit Draft Annual Report.
Oh, yes.
Page 179 onwards.
Okay. Who's introducing this, Neil? Thank you.
Myself again, Chair. Thank you again. This is the same as the previous report in that you have already had this circulated. I think it was probably June. And again, because of the intervention at the last committee, it was felt appropriate to bring this formally to this committee for consideration and hopefully approval. I think it's important to say that obviously we're now in November and this relates to 1920. So it is an opinion. Effectively, it's the report that underpins the Chief Internal Auditor's annual opinion on the control environment during 2019-2020. I think it's also important to say that there shouldn't be any surprises in this report because it just pulls together the previous 4 quarter and reports that you've already seen and you have got assurance on throughout the course of the year. So this is intentionally meant to be a summary report to try and remind you how we get to those assurance and opinions and to give you the opportunity, obviously, to assess if that is sufficient to support the opinion. I think that's probably the most important part of the report is to go to 2.1.3, which is page, sorry, I'm a slow
182.
182, thank you. In the highlighted box, it says, on the basis of the audit work undertaken during the 1920 financial year, an opinion of satisfactory assurance is awarded. And that remains unchanged from 2018 and 2019, or 2018.
Why not good?
It's based on the suite of audits that we do. You'll see further down what the narrative behind satisfactory is. And I think when you have some areas of where there's been limited assurance given in some sort of reasonably important systems, it's very hard to go to an assurance of good.
Okay, we'll come to those later. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Good.
I think it's also important at this point to say that because of COVID, the colleagues from Milton Keynes were not able to complete the system reviews of payroll, treasury management, general ledger, bank rec and IT system controls. However, a decision with that was communicated through the Section 151 officers, and those jobs have started now and will effectively be given opinion for the 2 years, if that makes sense. So the 2021 audit will give an updated opinion on those key financial systems.
So what we're saying is that we've got 21 months with those systems unaudited.
Yes, that is true.
These strike me as fairly important systems.
Yes, they are. I think members will be aware. I think that we have been looking at sort of daily spend analysis work to try and ensure on an operational level that the internal audit have been challenging spend from April through to now. So we have been doing some more substantive testing on expenditure, but that doesn't, and that will help our opinion at year end, but that doesn't replace the opinion on systems on controls. However, the decision was not taken lightly, and it was based on also the knowledge that the previous audits had given satisfactory or better opinions on the control environment and compliance with that control environment for the previous audits.
Right. It's a pity that the external auditor is not with us at the moment, according to my screen. I'd be very interested in his view. David, you've got a question. David?
He's on mute at the moment.
Yeah, can't hear.
Sorry, I've just really to say that I agree with you, Chair. I am rather worried about the outstanding audit of these financial systems, particularly when I see things like bank reconciliation.
Absolutely.
And I guess one thing I would ask is it possible, as soon as some work has been done, which presumably it's in progress, that we get at least some interim assurance that there are not issues with it, rather than wait another 6 months or 9 months before we get a report.
I absolutely agree with that. And can you reflect our concern in another place, Neil?
I will raise it with the Chief Internal Auditor
right.
on his return, Chair.
So are we correct in saying that none of those audits have been completed? The ones that failed 1920 have not been completed yet in 2021.
You are correct in saying that those haven't been completed. Work has been started, and as I've said, we have done quite a lot of work on the sort of daily spend stats and instances from April. I'll also
I accept that we live in difficult times and that you've had staff diverted, but I hope you'll reflect our concern. And Rob will minute that.
Yeah. I will. Just one further point on treasury management. You'll be aware that's now being brought in-house, as the term goes. So the audit this year will be undertaken by Cambridgeshire staff, Cambridgeshire colleagues, on what will be the first year that I think Cambridgeshire has done treasury management, and that is underway, and will be reported in the normal quarterly updates. So if I could take you to 412.
For the reviews undertaken, that's page 185.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just to give the assurance that there were no reviews undertaken in the year where it was considered if the risks highlighted materialised, it would have a major impact on the organisation as a whole. So the Chief Internal Auditor is of the opinion that there are no system weaknesses that we've identified that should they be breached, if you like, there'd be a material impact on the organisation as a whole. And that's an important indicator for the opinion, and it underpins really why satisfactory can be given for the control environment.
Okay.
We then go on to 4.1.3. The committee will be well versed in how we deal with recommendations from reports, and we obviously make recommendations from all our work if there are some to be made, and we categorise them into sort of important, essential, etc. We then track them, follow up and report back to the committee on progress. I will go into the detail of that in a sort of minute, but again, the response from the organisation has been incredibly positive, and our recommendations have been accepted and for the very large part implemented. Where they're not implemented, we do track, follow up and give both JMT and this committee an update as to where, you know, where the service is in implementation. The next update for that will be in November.
And what I do see on whichever paragraph this is, 413, is that of the 84 recommendations, 64 have been accepted and implemented, and
yes,
12 are outstanding at the moment. But 64 out of 84 is not a bad batting average.
I mean, obviously those figures will be updated in November, but at the 31st of March, effectively, that was the situation for the annual year.
Good.
But yes, I agree. It certainly gives me no cause for concern how the organisation is reacting to audit reports. Then we talk about, I think we probably discussed it in great detail already, but the key financial system audits, and that just shows that the audits that haven't been completed, and I will take it back to the Chief Internal Auditor, you'll see the opinions in the previous year were either satisfactory or better, which does give some comfort. If they'd have been limited, then I think, you know, that we would have a different conversation, and I'm sure the work would have been expedited.
But we do have, if we're talking about table 2, we do have a limited against debt recovery systems.
But we did the work on debt recovery again in 1920. You can see that we did P2P, purchase to pay, accounts receivable and debt recovery, as well as pensions. So wherever there was a limited from the previous year, we did the work, and also we did the work that was Cambridgeshire based, really.
Right, but if I look at table 2, 4.2.4, against debt, 1819 we had limited, and 1920 we had satisfactory limited, so we still had a second limited for debt recovery.
Yes, that's sorry, Chair. Yes, that's correct. But what I'm saying is we did the audit of 1920, so we actually did repeat the work. Whereas, for example, Treasury Management and Bank Rec, we didn't do the work. So the limited opinion will have a suite of recommendations to try and take it from limited to at least satisfactory. Right. And they'll be tracked in the normal way. And I can also confirm that the debt recovery audit is underway for 2021, and they'll be picked up.
Good.
I think all I was then going to say is section 5 hopefully gives the committee assurance on the quality of the internal audit team, and also a taste of the workforce development plan, with our commitment to study and continuing professional development, and also see that the Chief Internal Audit is giving you assurance that we've operated in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards.
Right, but I'm fascinated by the statement 1920 included, 1920, we did a report on highway service contract open book review, with the first stage of this work resulting in a significant repayment to the council for the over recovery of costs. Now, bearing in mind this is not a part 2, what can you tell us about that? Because I would be interested. I mean, if we need to go into private session, we'll go into private session, but I view this with some concern.
I can I mean, obviously, it's commercially sensitive because it considers a third party. What I think I can say in public session is that work is ongoing in partnership with the third party, and we continue stage 2 of the work.
Right. I mean, we may have to have a separate report, but I would be concerned about why it was that we paid sums that we had to then recover. Something sloppy has happened here, I would suggest.
Again, because I'd have to just advise the committee that I would be happy to commit to bring a report back to the November meeting.
Rob, can you put that down, please?
I can.
Chair, may I come in if may?
Certainly.
I sympathise with Neil here because he obviously doesn't have all the information to hand. I think the person who might have the information to hand is the director of that particular area, and I don't see why not. We couldn't ask for whoever is concerned in obviously non-public session to come before the committee and explain why and why and all this is happening.
I see a nod from you, Mac. Right.
It's about time they were answerable for what they're undertaking. They're well paid anyway.
They're paid.
Well, so could I put that suggestion before you? I see I have 2 seconders.
Anybody not want that? Let's do it. So Rob's made a note of that.
I have.
Thank you.
That lets you off the hook there, Neil.
Oh, you're so nice.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers.
Sorry, who seconded it? I didn't actually see. I was writing.
Oh, I will.
Okay. And that's the committee completely. I think unanimously.
Yes. That was my observation.
Yeah.
Anybody object?
I just finish off, Chair. I think to wrap up the introduction, just the appendix.
Well, can you just hang on there? Because on that page, table 3, open cases as at 5th of May 2020, there are 8 open inquiries. Have they been closed yet? Because it's a funny place to put that.
I will need to go away and answer that separately.
Add it to your list if you would, yes.
Yeah, and that'll be in the November report, Chair.
Yep. Sorry, you wanted to wrap up.
No, I was just saying the only extra bit I wanted to mention in the report was the appendix, which gives a summary of the audits, audit reviews that were completed in 1920.
I'll come to those in a moment. On page 192 at 4.6.12, we've got this National Fraud Initiative exercise where they took our data and flagged up 3,447 questions or cases that we ought to investigate, which strikes me as a huge number. Of those, 2,498 were high risk matches and 487 were medium risk matches. And when we get down to the bottom of, then we got a whole list of blue badge parking permits, and 257 have been cancelled and so on. But when we get to the bottom of this, we find that we have saved something like, I'm trying to find it, £4,000, or was it £12,000? Whatever, not very much money for what looks to me to be a huge amount of work. And I would be interested if somebody could pluck a figure out of the air without doing an in-depth analysis as to whether or not this was a worthwhile exercise. And are we required to participate, or is it voluntary?
I think we are required, well, I don't think, we are required to participate. The extent to which we look at data matches is up to the organisation. All I would say, because I'm an auditor, is that sometimes the deterrent factor and the knowledge that this work is being done.
I would think nobody. I would think the total number of people in the organisation who know that we do a National Fraud Initiative survey is negligible.
I'd appreciate that, Chair, but obviously the for example, for Blue Badge, we do go back to the people who are no longer entitled. And
but what we've got here is wiping out all the historic occurrences. So new occurrences in a year would, in my view, be very small. And if we could possibly get out of it, we saved, I found it, £21,000. Or if we add together all the future income from Blue Badges, 147,000, which I quarrel with. 21,000 is a ridiculous amount when you're looking at 3,447 cases. So if we could possibly take a year off, I think that would be highly advantageous, assuming that people have got other things they could be doing. And I don't see a shortage there.
I will take that back to the Chief Internal Auditor and through the fraud team, and I'm sure they will come back with comments in the November meeting, if that's okay, Chair.
Well, I'm happy to have the preliminary response by email in the meantime.
Certainly, yeah.
Can we? Is it worthwhile? Can we have a year off, and then we'll do the official report too? Right. Sorry. Go on.
I think I was finished, Chair. I'm sort of ready for questions, if that's okay.
Right. Well, I'll start because I can't get everybody on the screen, so I can't see if you've got hands up. Cybersecurity control weaknesses identified. Have they been addressed? And is there something that you could say, bearing in mind we're in public session? I don't want everybody rushing off to crash our systems by what you now say, but what sort of things have we found?
Let me just check. I had an email on this morning. It was done by our LGSS IT colleague. Yeah, the issue was that that there were, the opinion was predicated on KPIs not being fully achieved in the year.
Now this is cybersecurity. I'm coming to KPIs.
You've caught me. What reference is that, Chair? Sorry. 4472. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't got the detail of that. However, the opinion was satisfactory. So there were no significant issues as part of the report. What I can do is to commit for next time or by email to tell you what the recommendations were and the progress against those recommendations to date.
I think we'll do that by mail rather than add a report, because I really don't want to advertise any weaknesses we have to the world who are listening open-mouthed to our committee meeting this morning. So yes, go on to KPIs.
Because can I just say Councillor Hudson's had his hand up for a while.
Right, thank you, Rob. Peter, I'm sorry, I just can't see you at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to refer yourself and the committee to Appendix A, if that's appropriate at this time. That's page 198.
198. Right.
And if you look at the table, count down the 7th item. Wait a minute.
198. 198, yes.
Annex A. Appendix A, I'm sorry. Yeah. 198. Seven items down within the table.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we get Manor Farm tenancy review. And, shock, horror, surprise, surprise, not. It's still in progress. Chair, I think this has come to an end. Last meeting, we were informed, in fact, we were assured that the long-awaited report had in fact been completed. And on top of that, it had been sent to the stakeholders for comment. And the last comment from the stakeholders have been received by internal audit and this authority a day before the last meeting. That was a month ago. So I'm asking, Chair, and if you could take this forward and upwards, please, where is it? Why is it not here?
Right, I can give you
This committee. This committee has a right to see this report. I would also like, Chair, if necessary, for us to get the monitoring officer, because I don't know where she is today, along with the internal chief auditor, and if necessary, the chief executive, to explain why we've been kept waiting, what is going on, and as you say, we could do that in private session. But this authority is supposed to be transparent, and waiting for 2 years for a report is not acceptable. And I don't think you or us as members of this committee, as elected members, should put up with it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Forcefully put, as usual. Right, I can give you an update such as I know it. The first thing to say is that I know no more about the content of this report than you do. I have been similarly excluded. My understanding is that, as you reported, there was a fact check exercise distribution to key stakeholders where they could comment on what it was said about them. And that produced a bushel load of comments, as I understand it. Those who went through line by internal audit, as a consequence of which there have been some changes to the report. And I know nothing about the content of that. But just to surmise, it could be that Councillor Hudson raised a point about the non-delivery of the document. And that was in the first document. And now the second, by the time it comes to the second distribution, it says Councillor Hudson raised the non-delivery of the document, and this has been addressed, has been added to the report, for example. I mean, that's a trivial example, and I'm hamstrung by not knowing the more substantial ones. My understanding is there is a second fact check exercise on the, you shake your head, Peter, I'm simply telling you what I've been told.
I'm shaking my head in despair, Chair.
Right, okay. And my understanding is that the process is running through. I am extremely concerned that this committee has an opportunity to debate this in public prior to us going into PERDA.
I think, Chair, we should get the monitoring officer and whoever else we need to explain themselves at the next meeting if we don't have the report. And we could go in private session if we need to. And I think it's essential the report comes before Christmas. This could go on forever. Every little change is a brand new document, go out to all stakeholders yet again. You know, we've been waiting 2 years.
Rob, what do we need to do in order to, well, sorry, first of all, sorry, I need to change my screen. Right, so I can now see you all. What do other members feel about this? Are we broadly in agreement? David, I can only see the top half of your, that's better, because otherwise I couldn't tell whether you were with us or against us. And you're currently down to speak. No, sorry, Matt.
That's a choir I've got.
David,
Yeah.
You're not on mute.
Chairman, are you taking mine? You asked a question. You asked a question there. Are we in agreement with? I think you were asking if we were in agreement with the point being made by Councillor Hudson.
Yes.
And the because whilst others may have had access to these reports as an audit and accounts, we haven't. I haven't seen it, so I have no idea. So, yes, I'm in agreement.
Others? John, you're nodding. Your microphone is off, but that's fine. David?
I agree with the proposal that we should see it.
That's fine. Terry?
I'm as frustrated as everybody, and I think I endorse what Peter has said full-heartedly.
Right, Peter, you look as if you've got a clean sweep here, so well done for raising the issue. Rob, what are you going to write down, or what have you written down, or what are we going to do?
I write down that you're requesting some sort, I can't say it's going to be a final report, but some sort of interim report on where we are, you know, which may have to be taken in private session. I mean, if it's what I remember from Duncan at last meeting saying there were still legal exchanges, I seem to recall. So
well, at some stage we may have to have Councillor Hudson said 2 + 2 is 5, and but he now wishes to change that as part of the legal exchange. I think there are two separate things here. There is Councillor Hudson rightly expressed his frustration at the length of time that this has taken, and the monitoring officer and the chief internal auditor should answer that, and that can be, in my view, in public session. I can't see any reason why that can't be. The content of the report, until I know what's in it, I can't tell whether it needs to be public or private, but there are two issues there. And we could certainly have the first one at the November meeting.
The issue is, Chair, if I just may come back for 2 seconds, I mean, this report is there and it has been read by people within the authority. You know, there are people who know exactly what it says. All the stakeholders know what it says. The only people who don't know what it says are the very people who should know what it says, which is the people I can see on my screen now.
Point well made. Have we dealt with Manor Farm? I think so. Can I, in that case, go back to where we were, which was the KPIs, Neil? And I'm conscious of the fact that you want to be away by 12. You need to be away by 12.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Yeah, the KPIs we're talking about for the IT work. I'm just looking for the reference. Sorry, my God.
What page, please, Chair? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just
leaning back and I can't find myself.
It's 194, 4.7.3.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, I think the probably questions are why was it limited, and you know, from the discussions, what were those discussions? The answer I've got from my IT colleague is that there were 1 or 2, not that many, help desk key performance indicators, such as speed of response would be one of them, abandoned calls being another, which again is linked to speed of response. And that was a reason for the limited assurance.
Well, what I can say is that it took me 50 minutes to get in. Now, this was the 365 pressure of work, and apparently lots of people were having difficulties, but 50 minutes, in my view, is unacceptable.
I think that's reflected in the audit opinion, Chair. Okay. Because it obviously didn't meet the performance expected. The sort of reasons why there's a positive trajectory that's referenced, where we've been informed of good progress, that being informed is different to going out there and verifying that there's been good progress. We'll verify that by having a look at the performance targets and achievement at the next scheduled audit. But
which is when?
That is within this year again.
Right.
So it's in the 2021 plan.
Okay.
The head of audit has given assurance. Head of IT has given assurance that the staffing levels are being addressed, and that they are aware of the need to improve. So there's some positive action being taken to address the issues raised by not just audit, but obviously customers, if you like, of that service.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that? No. Okay, so you referred to appendix something or other further down, where we had a list, didn't we, of audits completed?
Yes, Chair.
And where am I? No, that's right. So if I look at the audits that have been completed, I find that Manor Farm is still in progress, which we've just discussed. Fire safety was limited. rental income was limited, Ely Bypass had a systems limited, contract management had systems limited, County Farms is wrapped up with Manor Farm, section 17, whatever that is, and the IT service desk that we've just referred to. Is that a typical score?
Yes, I think that the fact that the overall opinion on the control environment has remained as satisfactory shows that's a consistent suite of audits as has been seen in previous years. But just to remind yourself, Chair, and committee members, all of these reports that you see in the appendix have been reported individually during the year in the progress reports
Yes.
that you receive
Okay.
quarterly.
Can
each of the recommendations made are on the action plan, so you can track the recommendations.
Can you unravel what section 17 is?
Section 17 is in social care.
Right. Okay. Fine. Members, is there anything else that you wish to ask Mr. Hunter, who is about to leave us if we are going to let him go? Right. Rob, what are we asked to do?
So you're asked to review and agree the plan. And also you've obviously approved a second recommendation to have a report back on Manor Farm from the monitoring officer and the chief internal auditor at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we need to specify that splits into two. One is the reason for the extended continuing delays in bringing it forward, and then secondly, the final report itself.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking for the final report. I mean, obviously, if I can't say that there will be the final report, but you are asking for it. That's the recommendation.
But that's that. I want to separate that.
Yeah.
I don't want them to say, well, we can't do the final report, therefore we're not going to come and explain why there's their delay.
No.
This needs to be bottomed.
Yeah.
Councillor Maguire, you were waving at me.
I was, Chair. Yes, I was, because I was looking for the blue hand function then, so I may have missed what you and Rob said, but we also, for our future meeting, want to have an explanation as to the highways contract. So we were also...
Yes, thank you.
Fiona. We were going to
Neil, if you want to...
highways.
Neil, if you want to go.
I'll be okay for a minute or two in case there are any last questions, but thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, so Rob, do you want to know? I think we now move to the to next meetings, don't we?
Yes, the agenda plan as set out. It starts at page 201. I mean, I'd draw your attention really to the next page where I've got some red, because as a result of group leaders making a decision, they've now said with regard to information reports, they will leave it to committees to decide on reports that have in the past been going for outside of the meeting, that those listed, it would now be a committee decision if they would want to include them on the agenda. And the ones we have to come forward to what would be the November meeting is the Transformation Fund Monitoring Report Q2, the Performance Report Q1, the Resources Report, that's the one that goes to General Purposes Committee, so that's there. Again, these are all for information, and the Safer Recruitment in Schools update.
Okay, if you pause there, I would not like to see us not keep on top of safer recruitment. It was something that was where I think this committee has been responsible for substantial improvement, and I'm sorry that Chris Medal won't be around to talk about it, but I thought he did an excellent job, and the team, and I think this is a really important area, and I would like to have a report, unless the rest of the committee disagrees with me. Need to look at the committee. No, I don't think anybody does. Oh, sorry, I've got David Wells and Terry Rogers. Mr. Wells.
Sorry, it was relating to the previous audit report, just a minor point, but on page 191, there is a reference to the staff survey on whistleblowing.
Yes.
And it should be corrected in line with the corrections that we agreed
today.
Yeah. Earlier.
Good. Okay. Yep. Neil will take that on board. Good job you stayed. Right, Terry?
Endorse your comment on the recruitment to schools update. I also feel it's important we look at the transformation programme, bearing in mind the financial situation the council might find itself in and where we're going to get monies from, etc., and what the plans are of the head of other committees, so to speak.
Right, that was one that I didn't have on my priority list, but I'm happy to go with that. I would certainly like to see the IRPR, but I'm happy to take that as an email to me if nobody else is interested. People want to see that?
You will be getting that report outside the meeting anyway. This is to decide if you want it on the agenda.
Right, well, until I look at it,
you have got the
accounts. Sorry, Rob, couldn't hear that.
Sorry, I was just saying, bear in mind that the next meeting, one of the main items is the accounts. So that's the only thing we're doing, is to look at what you're saying you want on the actual committee, yeah, compared with these reports that, as far as I know, are to be produced, that would still come to you, but by email.
That's fine. That's fine. I can't tell you whether we need to discuss it until I see it. Right. Any others, members? Mac? You do move your hands very evocatively. Yeah,
because I put the blue hand up, but obviously it's not easy for you to all see. These are coming up. I think I need a reminder, but I'm fairly sure that the idea that we're talking about was that for information items, it was being suggested that they don't come to committees at this stage because of for some people, the perception that it expands the agenda, makes it a bit difficult when you're dealing with Zoom and team type meetings.
Right, can I just pause you, Mac, just to clarify, you're talking about coming to the committee meetings to be discussed?
Yeah.
Yes, not distribution to the committee meetings or to the committee members, but discuss it.
Yes, yes.
It's the point Rob was just making.
If that was the principle, all I'm saying here is that I'm personally content, given that for most committee meetings, the chairman will have a briefing meeting prior to it. I have it for full council, so I guess you have it for yours. And that decision, I'm content for it to be left to the chairman to decide what should and shouldn't go on the agenda, given you want to obviously contain the agenda to the point where it's not too lengthy and that we can manage the business of the day. So too many from information items can often result in us not having time to debate the decision-making items. If I'm wrong, then please correct me, but I thought that was the principle we're working on. So I'm content for the chairman to make that decision.
Members?
Can I just say that that was the decision of group leaders for the committee to review what it wants on the agenda. So I'm only going what group leaders have now agreed, because you're quite right. The previous policy has been for a while now with the virtual meetings protocol is that information reports should not come to the committee but should be circulated outside. Now, as a result of Councillor Rogers making representations, and also I think Duncan was concerned that the two reports you've now seen today didn't come to committee, group leaders reviewed their decision, but the decision was that the committee would review it, which is, I'm just trying to make that sort of point, if you like.
Right, understood. Well, what does this committee wish to, assuming that we end up with the permission to have our views on this dominate, what do we want? Do you want to leave it to me, or do you want to have to review every item? I'm easy either way.
I'm personally content to leave it to you, maybe in consultation with the vice chairman.
That's precisely what I had in mind, either officially or unofficially. Okay, let's accept that.
Can I just say that you've already agreed then, unless I've got this wrong, that you want the Transformation Fund monitoring report is what Councillor Rogers was suggesting should go on the committee agenda, and also safer recruitment in schools update. And so for the moment, the other two would be coming to you by email outside of the meeting, performance report.
That's right. And my suggestion would be that we don't try and second guess meetings after that at this stage, because life is changing so dramatically that
things may change again.
Things may change again. I've also suggested to Rob that I don't really think it's worth all the electricity that we use in sending me details of meetings that we might have next year after the elections, because it's just clogging up the number of pages.
Yeah, I've understood that really what you're saying is the agenda plan, you just want it to stop before the elections, and obviously while I can have
you can have your own black book somewhere else.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. I'll take that on board.
Right. Date of next meeting, 24th of November, 2 p.m. Any reason why I should extend this one?
No.
Right, lovely. In that case, we will close the public meeting, please, Nick.